The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Second Book. The Letter of BELICENA VILLCA. Second Day. I will start from the Pact of Blood. The same means that the White Atlantans mixed their blood with the representatives of the native populaces, who were also of white race, generating the first dynasties of warrior kings of divine origin. They would affirm then, because they descended from the White Atlantans, who declared to be sons of the gods. But the warrior kings had preserved their divine legacy, supporting it in spiritual and bloody aristocracy, protecting their racial purity. That is what they would make for millenniums. Until the enemy strategy operating through the foreign cultures achieved to blind or derange them, and this took them to break the Pact of Blood. And such fail of compromise with the sons of the gods was, as you will see next, cause of great ills. Of course, the Blood Pact included something more than the genetic legacy. In first place was the promise of the wisdom the White Atlantans had assured to their descendants, and future representatives, that the loyalty of the mission would be rewarded by the Liberator God with the highest wisdom, that allowed to the spirit the return to the origin, beyond the stars. It means that the warrior kings, and members of the blood aristocracy, would become also wise warriors, men of stone, as the White Atlantans, just complying the mission and respecting the Pact of Blood. On the contrary, the oblivion of the mission or the betrayal to the Pact of Blood would bring serious consequences. It was not about a punishment of the gods or something like that, but the loss of the eternity, that is, an irreversible spiritual fall, even worse than the one that incarcerated the spirit to the matter. The Liberator gods, according to the particular description that the White Atlantans made of the native populaces, didn't punish, neither forgive their acts nor judged, because they were beyond all law. Their gazes only repaired in the spirit of men, on their spirituality, in their will to abandon the matter. Those who loved the creation, those who wanted to remain subjected to the suffering and pain of the animal life, those who, by sustaining these illusions or other similar, forgot the mission or betrayed the Pact of Blood, would face no punishment, no. Was just assured a loss of the eternity. Unless that it could be considered a punishment, the implacable indifference that the gods exhibit to all the traitors. Referred to the wisdom, the native populaces received in every case a direct proof that they could acquire a superior knowledge, a concrete evidence which talked more than the incomprehensible arts employed in the megalithic constructions, and this proof was undeniable, which situated the native populaces over any other that had not made pacts with the Atlantans, consisted in the comprehension of the architecture and the form to domesticate and govern the animal populations useful to men. Indeed, since the departure of the White Atlantans, the native populaces counted to sustain themselves in their place, and to comply with their mission, with the powerful help of the agriculture and the animal breeding, no matter what they were before, collectors, hunters, or just looter warriors. The magic enclosure of the fields, and the plotting at the walled cities, had to be realized in the land using a stone plow that the White Atlantans gave to the native populaces for the purpose. It was a lithic instrument designed and constructed by them, from which they never had to separate, and which they would use only to found the agricultural and urban sectors of the occupied space. Naturally, this was a proof of the wisdom, but not the wisdom itself. And what about the wisdom? When would be obtained the knowledge that allowed the spirit to travel beyond the stars? Individually it depended of the will employed to return to the origin and the orientation of that will. Anyone could leave in any moment and from any place if the wisdom from the will to return and the orientation towards the origin was acquired. The combat against the potencies of the matter would need to be resolved. In this case, personally, that would constitute a feat of the spirit and would be taken in great value by the Liberator gods. Collectively, otherwise, the wisdom of the liberation of the spirit, that would make possible the departure of all the wise warriors to the Kataba, and, from there, towards the origin, would be obtained only when the theater of operations of the essential war be transferred again to the earth. Then the Liberator gods would come back to manifest themselves unto men to guide the forces of the spirit in a final battle against the potencies of the matter. Until then, the wise warriors would have to comply effectively with their mission to prepare for the final battle, and then, when they had been summoned by the gods to occupy their battle position, the wise warrior would have to demonstrate altogether the wisdom of the spirit. Just as the White Atlantans affirmed that would be unavoidable if the native spirits fulfilled their mission and respected the blood pact, because then the highest wisdom would coincide with the strongest will to return to the origin, with the highest courage disposed to fight against the potencies of the matter, and with the maximum spiritual hostility against the non-spiritual. Collectively, the highest wisdom would be revealed at the end, during the final battle, in a moment when all the wise warriors would be able to recognize each other simultaneously. How? The opportunity would be recognized directly with the pure blood, in an inner perception, or through the stone of Venus. To the warrior kings of each elite populace, that's to say, to their offspring, the White Atlantans also had a stone of Venus, a gem similar to an emerald of the size of a child's fist. Such stone, which had been brought to the earth by the liberator gods, was not facet at all but finely polished, showing over a sector of the surface a light concavity in which center was observed the sign of the origin. According to what the White Atlantans revealed to the warrior kings, before the fall of the extraterrestrial spirit in the matter, existed in the earth an animal man extremely primitive, son of the creator god of all the material forms. That animal had an animic essence, that is to say, a soul, capable to reach immortality, but lacked of the eternal spirit that characterized the liberator gods or the own creator god. However, the animal man was destined to obtain evolutionarily a high grade of knowledge with respect to the work of the Creator, knowledge which was resumed in the sign of the serpent. In other words, the serpent represented the highest knowledge for the animal man. After the mystery of the fall, the spirit remained incorporated to the animal man, prisoner of the matter, and emerged the necessity of its liberation. The liberator gods, who in this were such terrible as the damn creator god captivating spirits, only attended, as I said, to those who disposed of the will to return to the origin and exhibited orientation towards the origin. To those brave spirits, the gods said, "You have lost the origin, and you are prisoner of the serpent. With the sign of the origin, comprehend the serpent, and you will be free again in the origin." Hence, the wisdom consisted to understand the serpent, with the sign of the origin. This is the reason of the importance of the legacy that the White Atlantans gave by the pact of blood, the pure blood, blood of the gods, and the stone of Venus, in which concavity was observed the sign of the origin. That legacy, undoubtedly, could save the spirit if, with the sign of the origin, the serpent is understood, just as the gods ordained. But to obtain the wisdom for the liberation of the spirit would not be an easy task, because in the stone of Venus was not engraved the sign of the origin. Over it, on its concavity, it could only be seen, and was seen only by who respected the pact of blood due to, in reality, what existed as divine legacy of the gods was a symbol of the origin in the pure blood. The sign of the origin, observed in the stone of Venus, was just the reflector, the symbol of the origin present in the pure blood of the warrior kings, of the wise warriors, of the sons of the gods, of the semi-divine men, who, attached to the animal body and to a material soul, had an eternal spirit. If the pact of blood was betrayed, if the blood turned impure, the symbol of the origin would be debilitated and would not be possible to see the sign of the origin over stone of Venus. Any more would be lost in this manner the possibility to comprehend the serpent, the maximum wisdom, and with it the chance to be incorporated in the essential war. On the contrary, if the pact of blood was respected, if the pure blood was preserved, then, the stone of Venus could be denominated with justice mirror of the pure blood, and those who could see over it the sign of the origin would be initiates in the mystery of the pure blood, real wise warriors. The White Atlantans affirmed that their continental advance was guided directly by a great white chief, that they called Neptune. That chief, who was only seen by them, and for whom they felt a deep respect and veneration, had fame to have been who revealed to the own White Atlantans the sign of the origin. Naturally, the sign of the origin would be incommunicable, because it only can be seen by who has previously, in his blood, the symbol of the origin. The stone of Venus, mirror of the pure blood, allowed to obtain an external reflect of the symbol of the origin. But such reflect, the sign of the origin, could not be communicated neither by initiation nor by any other social function if the receptor lacked from the legacy of the symbol of the origin. Even amongst the white Atlantans, it was a time where only a few, individually, achieved to know the symbol of the origin. The difficulty was represented by the impossibility to establish a correspondence between the uncreated and the created, like if the matter was impotent to reflect the uncreated. In fact, the stones of Venus had been structurally modified by the liberator gods to accomplish its function. With the purpose to resolve this problem and provide to their race the highest wisdom, even highest than the Lithic wisdom knew by them, Neptune had descended to hell. At least that was what the white Atlantans related. Here he fought against the potencies of the matter, but he didn't achieve to force them to reflect the symbol of the origin, and make it able to be seen by all the members of his race. It seems that was Freya, his divine wife, who resolved the problem. She expressed the sign of the origin through the dance. All the movements of the dance proceed from the movement of the birds, of their archetypes. The discovery of Phrygia allowed Neptune to comprehend the sign of the origin with the language of the birds, and to express it in the same way. But this was not a language composed by sounds, but by significant movements, which were realized by some groups of birds, especially the winged birds, like the heron or the crane, and the gallinaceous like the partridge, the peafowl or the pheasant. According to Neptune, to understand the symbol of the origin, were required exactly 13 plus 3 runes, in other words, an alphabet of 16 signs denominated runes, or varans. Thanks to Neptune and Freya, the white Atlantans were herespecs. From the Spiceria, that is to say, they were gifted to comprehend the sign of the origin, observing the flight of the birds. The language of the birds accounted for them, a spirit racial victory against powers of matter. In this form would be synthesized the wisdom of Neptune, who understands the alphabet of 16 runes, would comprehend the language of the birds. Who understands the language of the birds, would comprehend the sign of the origin. Who understands the sign of the origin, would comprehend the serpent. And who comprehends the serpent, with the sign of the origin, could be free in the origin. It is clear that the white Atlantans didn't trust in the durability of the language of the birds, which, notwithstanding it, they transmitted to the descendants of the Pact of Blood. They anticipated that, in case of triumph of the cultural pact of the swarthy Atlantans, the sacred language would be forgotten soon by the men. In such case, the only guarantee that at least someone individually achieved to see the sign of the origin, would be constituted by the stone of Venus. With great success, they based on it the fulfillment of the mission. Thus, when the white Atlantans bade farewell to my ancestors, Dr. Sentinel, they suggested an appropriate form to assure the fulfillment of the mission. First of all, the Pact of Blood would need to be respected without exceptions and maintain, for it, an aristocracy of the pure blood. From this aristocracy, which started with the descendants of the white Atlantans, were already selected the first kings and the wise warriors who would guard the ploughed stone and the stone of Venus. In fact, in the beginning every populace was outbreeding divided in 3 groups. Each one of them had the right to use the Lithic instruments and contributed, for a common custody, a wise warrior. They conserved the instruments inside of a secret grotto and, when they had to be used, they transported the 3 of them all together. The 3 groups of the populace, of course, obeyed to a same king. As the centuries passed by, the reason of the cultural defeat that I will expose later, the triple division of the populace was forgotten, even if it lasted for a long time. The custom to entrust the custody of the Lithic instruments to the 3 wise warriors or Vrayas. In consequent place, all the kings and the noble by blood would be initiates in the mystery of the pure blood. The initiation would be up to 16 years old, when they would be faced to the stone of Venus, and it would be tried to make them see on it the sign of the origin. who could see it would dispose in that moment of the enough wisdom to perform the self-liberation of the spirit and to return to the origin. But, if the wise warrior was a king or a hero and wanted to postpone his own spiritual liberation in order to seek the liberation of a race, two would be the steps to follow. The first one consisted to comply with the command of the liberator gods and comprehend the serpent with the sign of the origin, communicating then the reached wisdom to the remaining initiates. Once seen the sign of the origin, the second step of the initiate demanded to not apart the attention from the stone of Venus, because on it, over its concavity, someday would be seen the lithic sign of Kataba, that is to say, an image that would signalize the path towards the city of the liberator gods. This principle would give place to a secret intuition amongst the Iberians. About it I will talk a lot later, of the Noyos and Reyes, initiates enshrined to protect in every moment and place the stone of Venus and await the manifestation of the origin. Thus was how the descendants or allies of the White Atlantans, who executed the first step in the comprehension of the serpent, and that was represented in the real form of a reptile, or abstractedly with the form of the spiral, they were universally considered Ophidian worshippers. Such confusion was malignantly employed to relate every kind of tenebrous intentions or acts. With this objective the enemy associated the snake to the ideas that most repugnance or fear produced in the ignorant populaces of the earth, the night, the moon, the demonic forces, or what is creeping or subterranean, the occult, etc. In this form, by means of a slanderous and malicious vulgarization of their acts, because no one except the initiates knew about the existence of the stone of Venus and the sign of the origin, they achieved to blame the wise warriors of black magic, that is, of the grossest magic arts, those which were practiced using the passions of the body and soul. Curious paradox. The initiates of the mystery of the pure blood accused of black magic and humanity. Those who just because understood the serpent, total symbol of the human knowledge, were out of what is human.